Hi, this is Raj from Sportscars. In this video I'm going to talk about how the 997 Gen 2 911s, particularly the Carrera models, are very much the modern equivalent of the 993 series air-cooled 911 Carrera models. Production of the second generation 997 series 911 Carrera for us began in 2009. It featured an all-new engine with direct fuel injection, and it was mounted 10mm lower in the car. It had a revised suspension system, new front bumper with larger air intakes, LED rear and front daylight running lights, an all-new Porsche communication management system with touchscreen, hard drive, navigation and Bluetooth. The Generation 2 cars also do not suffer all of the problems of earlier 997 Gen 1 cars, including IMS bearing failures, RMS oil seal leaks and bore scoring. All of these issues were eradicated by Porsche when they designed the all-new direct fuel injection 911 engines for the Generation 2 997s. The Porsche 911 Carrera 4S in particular looks stunning with the red strip reflector on the rear of the wider body shell and large red brake calipers all round. Just the Carrera 4 and Carrera 4S models came in the 4.4cm wider body shell. The Carrera 2 and 2S were only sold in the narrow 911 body. The 993 series was the last generation of Porsche 911 to use air cooling in their engines. The 993 was more of an update on the previous 964 than a total redesign. Every aspect was improved in the 993. With wider, less rounded front wings and flatter headlamps, the 993 brought the biggest alteration in the 911 shape since the original was introduced in 1964. The rear wings were broader and blended into the tail in a more direct line. The overhaul was so radical that Porsche claimed only 20% of parts were carried over from the previous generation. The rear trailing arm suspension of 964 was replaced with an all-new multi-link setup to make the car more predictable in corners. The result saw the 911 come of age. Quality was better than ever, with sharper handling and improved refinement. The 993 represents to many fans a perfect blend of classic and modern 911. A particular favourite of many Porsche fans is the 993 Carrera S wide body. This rear-wheel drive air-cooled 911 was a run-out model endowed with the achingly beautiful wide body from the turbo of the same era. Combining the simple drivetrain that links back to the 60s origins of the 911 with the looks of the latest and greatest was a masterstroke by Porsche. The Carrera S models have always been in demand, trading at a slight premium to the non-S models. In recent years, the difference has become much more pronounced. Top condition, low mileage cars are now changing hands for over £100,000. The 993 Carrera S represents the ultimate blend in classic air cooling and modern ergonomics. The 993 Series 911 is the last in line of the great air-cooled engine Porsche sports cars. The build quality of the 993 and use of durable materials inside and out made it an ideal long-term ownership prospect. The turbo body wide arch Carrera S is a relatively rare and sought-after model in the range in its own right. Small dimensions of the 993 compared to modern 911s make it the ultimate B-road blaster. Here I've got a 997 Gen 2 Carrera 4S to make that comparison with, because I think it represents the best bits of the 997 Gen 2 Carrera models and its direct links with some of the styling features. So the aspects I'm going to talk about are the styling similarities, on the outside, the interior ergonomics being an evolution of the 993, and also the collectability and values and where I see them going in a similar way to the 993s have been going over the last few decades. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the styling. You can see the silhouette, and I'll superimpose a 993 silhouette over the top of this so that you can see that the overall shape of the 997 Gen 2 is very similar. From the side in particular, they increase some of the dimensions, and I'll go through some of those in a second, but basically the overall classic iconic 911 shape is still present in the 997 Gen 2. And the 991 that replaced this car changed the proportions of things quite drastically. So this is, for me, the last of that classic look that's very similar to the 993. Then it was a step forward, a step change when they introduced the 991, and then obviously followed it through with the 992. Now the first thing I'm going to talk about is headlights, so I will grab the camera. So these headlights are the PDLS headlights, but the basic shape and actually angle of the headlights, blending them into the wing, is very much like what you see on the 993. So that's the first obvious detail from the front of of the similarities in styling at the front. The bonnet shape is also very similar as well, and this is the same bonnet shape that's carried through the ages and just evolved here and there. This car has a sunroof, and obviously the 993s could be spec'd with a sunroof in a similar shape to this one. Later cars, the 991s, they brought in a metal roof which came all the way to the edges of the strips here, but there was also the option for a panoramic roof as well. Now at the back, this is where things get interesting for me, because the 4S and the Carrera 4 have the wide body rear, the turbo body, so it's 4.4 centimeters wider, and just like the Carrera S 993, which I think is, well, for me anyway, the most desirable 993 Carrera model. The Carrera S was the run out wide body car, which came out for the last year. It basically shared the same body as the turbo, and this harks back to it with its wider body. It obviously has vanes over the rear engine bay, which the 993 does as well. The other thing that I love about the Carrera 4S's and the Carrera 4s is the middle reflector there. That's only on the 997 Gen 2 Carrera 4S's and Carrera 4s. It's not on the Carrera 2 or the 2S's. I've got a 2S here undercover, and I'll show you the back of that so you can see. This is also the Carrera 2 and 2S were only available as a narrow body car, so there you go. Doesn't have that strip. It has the same lights, narrower wheel arches, and a narrower rear bumper, but yeah, no strip there, and the badge is actually placed further down on that boot lid on that car. So where the 2S of the 997 Gen 2 came with the narrow body, the 993 Carrera S came with the wide body. So I think it's a fair comparison to make with this one in particular. Now, I'll talk about the overall silhouette and basic shape being very, very similar. I can tell you that the size comparison now is the 997 Gen 2 is about 19 centimeters longer, which sounds like a lot, but actually the 991 was another big step on top of that as well. It's 5.7 centimeters taller, so they did actually increase the sort of proportions but retain the shape, and it's 1.5 centimeters wider at its widest point. That doesn't include wing mirrors. The wheelbase was slightly longer. It was stretched for more stability, 7.8 centimeters, and I'm not comparing like for like here, but this Carrera 4S is 65 kilos heavier than the 2S 993. But if I was to compare the 2S 997 with the 993 C2S, they would be pretty much the same weight. So that's incredible that they've made the car bigger. They've used lighter materials in those aluminium and steel composites, and just clever use of strengthening to make the 997 Gen 2 weigh almost the same as the 993, which I think is just incredible. Performance wise, I mean, there is a big difference, but for me, I don't like to make a big thing about which one is quicker and which one is got more horsepower, because basically these cars are all about feel now. They're not just about how fast they are 0 to 60 or what's their top speed or how much horsepower do they have. They are literally about how do they make you feel, are they collectible, are you going to be proud to have it in your garage. But I'll just run through the figures. So the 993 has 281 horsepower and will get to 60 in around 5.4. This car will get to 60 around a second quicker, and it has about 100 horsepower more. So it will feel a lot more responsive throughout the rev range in any gear. With 100 extra horsepower, that makes a huge difference. Coming back to the rear, I really do think that rear end is a great nod to the historical air-cooled cars, and it was carried over from, it was also on the 996 Carrera 4S too, but it was missed off from the 997 Gen 1 C4S and Carrera 4. Now coming on the inside, This is where, yes, this is a more modern interior than a 993, but you can see this is a clear evolution of the 993 interior with similar style sports seats. You could get hardback sports seats in a 993. The seats were sort of laid out very similarly in the rear, and then the dashboard layout is very similar. You've got your key here, your instruments in the center there. Yes, obviously they've updated the buttons, made the air conditioning and everything work a lot better, but you have a very similar feel to the 993, I feel. I mean, I might be reaching a little bit, but that's my opinion of it. And then you have the 5-dial instrument cluster. Now this has remained unaltered for decades, and the big departure in the 991 was basically replacing this screen with an LCD. But this 5-dial, I think, is most similar in the 997 Gen 2 when you compare it to 993 versus anything newer than that. And the layout of it just instantly is recognisable as a 911 dashboard. The Cayman and the Boxster have a similar layout. Well, it's almost identical, except it doesn't have the outer two. So this one is missing, and that one is missing there. So that's the dashboard side of things. I'll just put the camera back on my stand. Now, the other crucial thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of the experience of this 911 versus the 993 is how it drives. So as soon as you start it up, there's no doubting that this sounds like a very similar classic flat 6 thrum that you get from the 993. And I know that's obviously air cooled. It was the last air cooled. This is several generations into being water cooled, and I know there'll be some people who say there's no way you can compare a 993 to a 997 Gen 2 because one is fundamentally air cooled, one is water cooled, but the sound is recognisable Porsche as soon as you start up this car, and that was kind of lost, I feel, on much later generation cars, the 991 Gen 2, 992s. Yes, they sound great, but I think that sort of mechanical roughness about the engines, which is so unmistakable, Porsche 911 flat 6. This for me, with the styling and that engine sound, makes it the perfect updated version of the 993. It still has, as I said, the shape. It has the sound. How it performs on the road is obviously it's a step ahead in terms of 993. It feels more sure-footed because it's got bigger wheels, wider tyres, more modern tyres if you're comparing absolute like for like off the factory line. But obviously 993s now will have the same tyre technology because the owners have gone through and replenished the tyres and things. It has that capable PASM, Porsche Active Suspension Management System, which at the press of a button makes the car a lot stiffer. It's then got the same layout in terms of the suspension design, but it's been updated and refreshed. The body shell is more rigid over time. That's every iteration of Porsche. They improve the structural rigidity of the car. They even improve the aerodynamics of the cars as well. So all of that has to be factored in, but basically it's almost like if you said the 993 was 8 out of 10 on performance of the road, then this would be 10 out of 10. There are other aspects of it that I think make it a good descendant of the 993 in the steering system. So this car, the 997 Gen 2, was the last car to feature hydraulic steering. Now this one is a variable ratio rack, whereas the 993 is a straight ratio, so you do lose some of that natural feedback through having that, but it is the closest you get to having a similar steering system in the 993, in the 997 Gen 2. These 997 Gen 2s are great for those people that want to own a classically styled 911 but don't want all of the dramas of having the engine properly set up every couple of years. It's all self-adjusting. It's incredibly reliable in terms of the power plant, the transmissions, the PDK and the manual gearbox are extremely durable, and all of the electronics and everything work as they should. It has the modern PCM unit, which actually can now be updated with an extra motherboard to full CarPlay interactivity. It also has Bluetooth connectivity out the factory if that was selected as an option from the options list. And yeah, you can make this car the perfect weekend car without having all of the dramas of owning a classic car. The fact that it is such a great weekend car, I think, leads to it being now extremely collectible. The 997 Gen 2s, particularly in a sort of relatively low mileage, high spec car, have been increasing in value. And you saw the same with 993s. They sort of, from 2008, 2009 onwards, they've been increasing year on year. Now C2Ss are comfortably £100,000 cars or more, depending on condition and mileage. And from about 2017, 2018, you've also seen, about 10 years behind the 993, these 997 Gen 2s also increasing in price to a point now where you've got people that are almost feeling like they've missed the boat, because a couple of years ago they were significantly cheaper, thousands of pounds cheaper. Now they're creeping up and up and up, particularly the best examples out there. They're going up and up and up, and it's getting hard to find a car that's for sale that is the spec that you want, because owners are holding on to these for longer and longer. Just like 993s, there's much fewer 993s at a higher price on the market at any one time, and you're starting to see the start of that with the 997 Gen 2s, because they have that reliable engine without the RMS oil seal leaks, the IMS bearing failures, and the bore scoring that 997 Gen 1s and 996 can suffer from. These cars, all of those issues eradicated, engineered out. The design of the car was updated between this and the 997 Gen 1, so you've got some nicer styling features like the daylight running lights at the front, and the sharper pointed LED rear lights, plus all the PCM stuff I've already mentioned on the inside. This was basically the final iteration, from my point of view, of that 993 evolution, and then the 991 was the step change. So for me, I can see from an investment perspective that these cars are going to carry on increasing in price, particularly the best examples. So you're already seeing the ultra low mileage cars going for basically whatever two collectors will fight over what the price should be in auctions. With cars on the market like this one, they have been creeping up in price every year, and it does mean that your money is relatively safe in a 997 Gen 2, just like it is in a 993. I think these have the added advantage of being slightly cheaper to maintain over the years compared to a 993. They don't suffer in the same way for issues like rust, for engine issues in terms of requiring recommissioning and things like that. These cars, yes, they still have recommissioning items like suspension components, brake components, pipe work, coolant pipes, brake pipes, air conditioning pipes, air conditioning connectors, all of that stuff. But you would expect that with any car, any modern car. So to me, basically the whole actual fundamental part of the car, the electronics, the engine, the interior, the technology, is all sound. And if you buy a good one, and you also put some money aside just for recommissioning things as they come to the end of life, 10-15 years is the sort of window when you start refreshing more major components like pipe work. Obviously you'll have been doing brakes and tyres and things like that along the way, refurbishing alloy wheels, but recommissioning stuff sort of starts to creep in, like lower arms, air conditioning pipes, top mounts, all of that stuff, even on a low mileage example, will need recommissioning at some point, because things come to the end of their life, rubbers perish, rubbers harden, pipework joins do perish through heat cycles as well. So just be aware of that they're not maintenance free cars by any means, but I think the maintenance levels are lower on the 997 Gen 2, and I think that's why you're seeing a lot of people. I mean, I wanted to do this video for a long time, but for me it was in my head was, is this actually a modern version of the 993? And I've kept it in the back of my head for a number of years, but actually now I'm getting more and more people come to view these cars and ask me that question: do you think this is going to follow in the way of the 993, not just in terms of value, but also in terms of perception among collectors as being the one you can get out and drive, the one that has got the better components. It's more durable. The 993 was recognised as being more durable. The components with it, I think only 20% of parts were carried across from the 964. Everything was re-engineered, improved on at a component level, and I think this 997 Gen 2 is a similar thing. It's carried on that progression, and for that reason I think it is a great comparator. Yes, it is bigger, it is more modern, and some people will probably kill me for saying that this is a modern 993 because it's not air cooled, and a 993 is the air cooled. It's always going to be the best. But I think for those that want something that they can genuinely enjoy all year round and not have to spend thousands on it to get it to that position, the 997 Gen 2 is the one that people are choosing, and that's what I'm seeing. It's the one that you can leave outside sometimes. You don't have to worry about rust and things, but you can also park it up, you can polish it up, you can take it to shows and people still look at it because it has that recognisable 911 feel to it, rather than feeling like a modern supercar like the 991 and onwards do. So that's where I'm going to leave this video. I think I've covered enough in terms of why I think the 997 Gen 2 is so special, and why I think it is a modern day version of the 993 in terms of styling, interior ergonomics and feel, driving, sound and feel, as well as collectability and investment potential. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you did, please do subscribe to my channel, and thank you for watching.